Animated Survivor Reality TV. What a mouthful. This trope of television has evolved into a whole subgenre of shows on its own, especially when it comes to YouTube. It's gotten to a point where every combination of letters has its own version of this format. For the real connoisseurs among you, how many of these do you recognize? Now me myself, hi, my name is Silly Billy, you can call me Billy. Despite me making content on these types of shows, I am most certainly not an expert on this field. However, for the handful of shows that I have watched, I have noticed a pattern. They are a nightmare to balance. Total Drama My Ways are but one of many ways that people tend to criticize these shows. Entire rankings and discussions have spawned from how people ideally would like a season to go. I should know this, I am guilty of this too. A lot of this stems from the gimmick that makes these shows stand out. They're eliminations. Very few shows create a pattern where their cast of characters shrinks at a consistent pace. It's no wonder that people who like this gimmick tend to flock to this community, and why the community itself generally shares a passion for things like Total Drama, Traders, Battle for Dream Island, and Danganronpa. Projects that couldn't differ from each other more in terms of tone, and therefore intended audience, but who all captured the same corner of the internet who like this elimination gimmick. The elimination aspect creates a great amount of suspense by default. Without doing a whole bunch of setup, the premise of an entire cast of people where only one can emerge victorious makes people curious to find out who that one person could be. And by giving viewers one piece of that puzzle each episode by eliminating a contestant one by one, the excitement fuses with a feeling of attachment to the ever-dwindling cast of characters still on the show, inevitably resulting in your favorite character having to leave the show. Meaning, A, the character you were rooting for now won't fully accomplish the goal set up from the beginning, and B, you will no longer receive screen time with your favorite character. Eliminations have the possibility to elevate your story to a whole new level. However, a poorly handled elimination has the chance to do the exact opposite. Bad eliminations can sour the entire journey a character has been on and can detract from the goal that the character is brought in to fulfill. This leads to plenty of cases where people are unhappy with the current state a character is in, while the same character in a different show would be remembered much more fondly. Take for example shows like Battle for Dream Island and Inanimate Insanity. Both shows implement this elimination aspect by allowing real-life voters to vote out their least favorite character. As a result, characters that only have slight antagonistic prospects end up getting eliminated immediately because they are mean and they should be stopped. The stakes of your story lose any sense of meaning when random people can randomly vote out whichever character bugged them the wrong way while watching. How long do you think Heather, one of the most iconic and important aspects of all of Total Drama, would have lasted if viewers could decide the elimination, huh? This issue is less prevalent with the actual show that starts this whole subgenre, Survivor. Now, quick disclaimer, I have not watched Survivor, but we do have a similar show in the Netherlands called Expedition Robinson, which I have watched a fair bit. So I'll talk mostly about my experience watching that show, and you can fill in how much this applies to Survivor. So, Expedition Robinson features a select cast of people cast away to an island somewhere here. Or you know what? You get the picture. What makes Expedition Robinson exciting is that these are real people with real lives forced to strategize their way to the top. All people know only one of them can win, and the people making it far into this race are often not the ones who are the strongest physically, but those who can worm their way into the strongest mental positions. Despite being very similar to its animated counterparts, you rarely hear people post their preferred eliminations orders, let alone My Way videos. The reason for that is the real life aspect. People are unpredictable. What happens on show is the result of all their collective scheming and manipulating, and in that sense, this type of game show is almost more of a social experiment than anything else. Now compare this to Total Drama, a show with the same setup but different in one dimension. Literally, look at these flat pieces of paper, toothy looking wackos. Animated Survivor shows are not real. And because of that, their story is planned, thought of and written up by a bunch of producers trying to tell a fascinating story within this set piece. A solid animated Survivor show, just like any story for that matter, needs a clear premise, a clear goal, and a solid buildup of events leading from one to the other. This doesn't apply to the actual reality TV Survivor shows because, wouldn't you know it, people don't act in the way stories need them to. When a character who feels like the main winner gets eliminated halfway through in Robinson, you are left to wonder who now has the best chance. When the same thing happens in Total Drama, it can leave you infuriating that the storyline was not realized before it was ended. The story aspect brings a difficult to manage component to the elimination order of a show. You now also have to make sure that when a character is eliminated, they are going out on a high note. They shouldn't go too soon as to finish their story arc, but also not too late so that they don't meander in the middle. Protagonists, antagonists, comedic reliefs, and side characters need to be placed in a row in order to determine which character can be missed at what time and how the remaining characters can continue their stories without them. Not to mention when characters share a storyline and one of them ends up going out earlier than the other. You now need to fill in something for them to do in the meantime. This is difficult. After doing some more research, I think I concluded what are the 3 most important aspects of a character elimination in this animated setting. Starting with number 1, the elimination needs to be fitting. The elimination of a character should come at a point where their story reaches a natural conclusion. This could be a high note or a lower note when the character serves as an extension of another person's story. Their elimination should be at a time where their story can be wrapped up, or leave room for development but with enough satisfaction to park the story for now. Next to that, an elimination should be unpredictable. Eliminations should have a sense of shock that keeps them exciting and that keep you guessing. If every single elimination is predictable from the get-go, then a lot of interest is quickly lost in your show. Sky from Total Drama is a perfect example of that. In a show with 10 weird characters and only like 4 normal people, the question really is just, will the winner become Sky or Jasmine? Thirdly, you need eliminations to be consistent. Eliminations need to follow the rules set up by the show and the characters in them. Even though all characters are written, they still need to feel human, and that means not making their behavior shift from one episode to the next. Characters are not vessels for the plot to move forward, even though in a certain way they most definitely are. These 3 points form the key of a proper elimination, one that caps up the character's journey in this season with a certain level of surprise factor and whilst being logical in the context of the story. Now this sounds relatively easy, but in reality this is an absolute nightmare to accomplish. As such, I would like to present you Silly Billy's Trilemma of Animated Survivor Eliminations. What a mouthful. Yeah, let's just go with the Elimination Triangle. So, the Elimination Triangle basically shows us the 3 components that an elimination needs to accomplish, and that 2 of these components can be achieved pretty easily. But it usually comes at the sacrifice of the 3rd component. Say, for example, we strive for an elimination that is both consistent and unpredictable. We want an elimination to be a surprise to the audience, whilst also being logical within the setting of the show. This usually means that the character's story is not a point where eliminating them is satisfying through their personal story, and the elimination becomes ill-fitting. For example, the character catching on to the villain being booted out before they can act on it. It's consistent within the rules of the show, the character's voted out, and it makes sense why they would be, considering the scheming nature of the villain, and it is rather unexpected, because we know this character is one of the only people who caught on to the villain and is trying to expose them, so it's fairly surprising if they don't get this opportunity, but now it means that the arc and the journey that this character went on this season is not completed. We don't get a satisfying conclusion to their personal story, as their elimination is used for shocking development in the aid of the villain. This in turn trivializes the arc the character went on during the show. What was the point of following their development when ultimately it goes unresolved? A lot of fan-favorite underdog characters fall into this category too. There is a lot of potential not being utilized, and fans start to write their own interpretations for them. This makes sense because the story potential that these characters had is traded in for a suspenseful but still realistic elimination instead. On the other hand though, some characters stay in the show too long because there's no logical point to eliminate them and their story starts to drag. An earlier elimination could have benefited their storylines, but that would be predictable, and so the elimination goes to someone else instead. So animated reality TV should want to tell a compelling story with twists and turns to keep things exciting, but when striving for both unpredictable and fitting eliminations, inconsistent eliminations rear their ugly head. In my opinion, these are the worst offenders, creating eliminations that make no sense within the context of this story and clash with what we have come to expect from certain characters and their behavior. Players that have good positions in a game being targeted out of nowhere because suddenly the heroes had a change of heart for one episode. The villain's sidekick being one of the most likely characters to make it far, so they lose in a purge challenge with poorly defined rules. Or better yet, they are betrayed by their counterpart for literally no reason. Or even worse still, just getting eliminated for the heck of it. Medivacs in a cartoon, where stuff like this happens regularly. Inconsistent or straight up unfair eliminations can sour the entire storyline of a character. We follow a character for long stretches of the story only for them to get shafted. The original Total Drama Island has this issue a lot with losing its merch cost, finding ever increasingly dumb reasons to grant Heather the plot armor she needs to be the main villain.
Lashana? No!
On the other end, there are returning characters who won't contribute much to the story this season and need to be eliminated early as to not take up too much dead space. However, these eliminations can often ring hollow or require several hoops to jump through in order to work properly. Nobody questioning the validity of false accusations, rules being changed mid-game to justify the win going to someone else, villains having the easiest time to convince their teammates that their super friendly teammate did something bad and evil, characters quitting on their own terms for a never-before-shown aspect of them. Eliminations need consistency in order to be believable, and believability is essential when you want to sell the feeling of actual people rather than plot points. So, we need eliminations that are both fitting and well-timed in the journey of a character, as well as eliminations that are consistent within the larger story and the people involved in it. In the ideal world, every character would stay in until their story is wrapped up perfectly and then be eliminated in a consistent way. But then we run into the issue that we can probably get a good sense of who will be the winners and who will go out early, and the show becomes predictable. Early elimination characters do not have the same time to develop their arcs as those staying in longer, so their stories are either shorter or they don't really have one, and they just serve to develop other characters. But it doesn't take a genius to see who is going to stay in longer based on their stories. Take, for example, the best friends in the Redonkulous race. Devin starts with 5 stages of grief like halfway through the season. You can almost guarantee that they will be among the few final teams left in the race. This is also where the joke of your favorite character getting too much screen time comes from. Not all characters get perfectly spaced storylines. In fact, you have to spend more time on the characters getting eliminated early because A, they're gonna be gone after this, and B, if you develop your finalist character too soon and halfway through the show, then what are you gonna do with them afterwards? But if we want to wrap up the storyline of a character within the episode that they are eliminated in, it becomes very easy to detect their time to leave the show is coming up. Characters having emotional outbursts or making heroic sacrifices halfway through means that part of the tension that is generated from elimination races is lost. When all but one character still have ongoing storylines, the soon-to-be eliminated sticks out like a sore thumb. Knowing what is about to happen can make getting to that point a slog to get through, or at least more than a story without this elimination aspect. Now, obviously, I am not arguing that every single elimination ever is bad. In fact, if this video does well, I'll make a follow-up video with what are, in my opinion, the 10 best eliminations in total drama. Let's say 500 likes. Good luck. Either way, the point is to show you that the elimination aspect brings a whole bunch of headache that lead to unsatisfying or predictable story conclusions. With that being said, how do you break this mold? Which previous eliminations are good examples of escaping this elimination triangle, and how do they do it? So, in order to break the trilemma, we need to be able to somehow remove one of the 3 aspects without it resulting in a large fire and explosions going off everywhere. And we have definitely seen characters like this before. One such example is characters that serve a specific elimination role. These are characters where knowing their elimination beforehand doesn't detract from the suspense because of how expected their placement is. Take, for example, pretty much every total drama villain finishing somewhere between 4th and 2nd place. From the get-go, you have a sense of who is going to be the main nuisance of this story, and you know that right around the end of this show, their downfall is the conclusion to their story, with no victory for them as karma for their earlier behavior. Don't you dare point out Alejandro's win in the comments. This is my video. I can be delusional for the sake of making a point if I want to. These characters forego on the unpredictability of their elimination, but in return, they give us this deliciously entertaining villain role. Well, for the most part then. In some cases, knowing their placement beforehand can even contribute to the joke or story being told. Take, for example, my queen Stacy, whose elimination is wished by everyone including the viewer, and having her talk highly about all her family members only to be the first boot of the show and never returning elevates the joke status of this character. Same with Ezekiel, who claims time and time again that there is absolutely no way he will be the first boot in World Tour. Guess which position he gets. But it's not just for joke characters. If you want a more serious example, look at the Redonkulous race Ice Dancers. From day one, the pairing shows a particular disdain for the 3rd place podium spot. It is glaringly obvious that they will eventually end up 3rd and lose just before the finale. But it is this knowledge that makes their elimination so much more gratifying. If they wouldn't have this specific grudge against bronze, the color of failure, their elimination would have been a whole lot less satisfying to watch. Now, the Ice Dancers are among my favorite total drama villains, and this definitely contributes to that. But there are other aspects of the Elimination Triangle that could be dropped that don't negatively impact the elimination of the character. Izzy is a good example for how not all eliminations need to be consistent within the context of the show. Out of all 5 eliminations this character has, yes, that makes her the most eliminated contestant of all time, only 2 are because she is voted out regularly. The other 3 times all come up with insanely wacky ways to eliminate her. Fleeing her arrest, having her alter ego be voted out instead of her, and having her taken by the military for her intelligence after dropping a literal plane on her. Izzy does weird and wacky stuff in pretty much every episode she is in. Having the eliminations reflect that is about the most logical thing for this character's story. It isn't consistent with normal eliminations and does jump through quite a few hoops to get there, but because it's Izzy, it just works. Consistency can be sacrificed if the joke being told is strengthened by it. And finally, while I would not recommend breaking with the fitting criterion, I guess it makes sense to eliminate a character if you are focusing on the shock factor of their elimination as a larger plot thriving for other characters. Anyway, in that regard, it could make sense. For example, still eliminating Tom while his story is not really finished in Disventure Camp. It does make sense in that context because it is more so about the heroes needing a win more so than it is about Tom getting a satisfying exit. Either way, I would try to strive for this characteristic for any person you eliminate, regardless of who they are. Unless it's really funny. And I think that is also a good conclusion to this discussion. We have analyzed what makes an elimination objectively good, but we haven't really delved into the subjectivity of the eliminations. Ultimately, the goal is to tell an entertaining story, and I think that we can all agree that they most certainly succeed in that regard. But what do you think? What are, in your opinion, some of the best and worst eliminations, and why? Let me know in the comments. For now though, I want to thank you for watching, as well as an extra special shout out to the Silly Billy members. Thank you Lone Wolf 93, Arcadia Salvatierra Del Vecchio, James Be My Sugar Daddy, Top Ranger 237, Mayhem, Rhea is Queen, Corsa Corpse, Jessentine, Traffic, Host Light, Jessa, Hunter's Husband Tyler, Nathaniel B72, Daymania DJ, Madison, The Name is Tubby, No Eyes, Sorry Mr. Billy, that's Roblox Noah Craft apologizing for his way too long name from the last time, thank you very much, you are forgiven. Emily's Totally Real Nail Tech, Star Wars Timpin, Puppy Chan, Nighty, Just X, Lily Rose 55, Jericho Forest, Zeko McGecko, Rift, Creeper XOX, Neil, and Javi Koopa. Thank you for your continuous support on the Silly Billy channel. If you would like to receive a shout out too, as well as get early access to my videos, please consider becoming a member for only $2 a month. Again, I thank you for watching. This has been Silly Billy, and remember, the elimination of your favorite character is always unjust. Houdoop!